The first thing I wanted to ask you is just basically how is the squad looking for Saturday? You know, is there any fresh injuries to confirm, and how are Antoine Semenyo and Danny Simpson doing?
Antoine's been training all week. Danny hasn't, so Danny's a doubt. But Antoine's fine. So that's really where we are. I don't suppose, thinking now, there's no more changes apart from that. So the players who you know as being out are no closer to being back. The only changes would be people like Nathan Baker, who's back on the field running, so he looks better. We've got players like Chris Martin who've done running this week as well, which is he's back out on the grass, which is good. Cam Pring is probably going to be joining in with training next week, so we've got players who are making progress from their recovery from injuries, but it's not really going to affect the squad makeup for this week, really, I suppose.
So is there no real chance of someone like Nathan Baker being in the squad at all for Saturday?
No, I wouldn't think so. No. Well, no. I'll be more specific. No. Yeah.
And how have you been using this full week to prepare for Saturday's game? Are there any particular areas you've been working on the training pitch?
All areas, really. I mean, look, we want to try and finish the season in a positive fashion. So, I mean, one of the things that's really important is that we play with a bit more cohesion at times. You know, I think we've been disappointing in possession at times, and I think the players recognise that themselves. But I think that's also a bit of a spin-off from the run of games that we've had, the poor run of results. So maybe a bit of a confidence thing. But look, as far as I'm concerned, I just want us to finish with a positive feel towards the end of the season. I don't really want it to just peter out in a negative way. Having said that, there are always things to be learnt from disappointments and poor performances. So, I want the players to enjoy the remaining games and taking the challenge on to be as good as they can be. Simple, really. There's no rocket science there.
And how, in general, are you just finding life at the club? Have you relocated to Bristol at all, or are you still kind of commuting?
No, I mean, I've been down here since day one, staying down here. So, no, not actually living anywhere permanently down here. No, but I've been down here constantly, really.
Of course, I think the big news this week is about Mark Ashton. What did you make of the news that he was joining Ipswich Town, and how do you think that will influence things behind the scenes for the rest of the season?
Well, I don't think it will influence behind the scenes for the rest of the season. I think that's one of the key points from this. And Mark's going to a new role of which Ipswich are a part of it. So it's I think that's the key message. And I'm disappointed from a personal level, because we get on very well and work very well together, so it's. But of course, I wish him every success in his new role. But in terms of how it affects the rest of the season, on a purely operational level, it won't, because we're both very professional people, and I think it's important that people understand that this is a decision that he's made, for his own career. I think he leaves a very positive legacy behind him, actually, and I've really enjoyed working with him, and we've both spoken about making sure that we do everything we can to make sure the end of the season for Bristol City is a very positive, or as positive as it can be. And I know what it's like to be in a position where sometimes you get criticism. But as the saying goes, high trees catch more wind, don't they? just because people who make decisions aren't always going to be universally popular, because decision makers do precisely that and make tough decisions at times when people don't necessarily understand the rationale behind it. But look, that's a part that goes with the territory of having jobs with either authority or responsibility. You know, those are the, not the pitfalls, but those are a part of what jobs like that entail.
And how and when did he tell you that he was moving on? Did you find out, was it this week or?
Yeah, he told me in good time. That's really, I don't think it's when there are very sensitive issues like this. Let's just put it like this: there was everything was done in the correct order before it went public, and I think that's how these events should be dealt with. It was like I say, the staff and players were informed before we as a club went public, and I think it was done in the right way, and that's the most important thing.
Does it affect anything with you in terms of your willingness to stay long term?
It doesn't change my feelings on the situation. As I've already pointed out, I'm disappointed in some ways, because we have a very good working relationship and we get on very well as individuals too. So, you know, but I think, look, whenever there are decisions made that are at a business level, then it's really important to really process that information in the correct way. So, as I've already said, I would have liked to have spent more time working with Mark, but as the decision's been made, then it's about finding the next solution to whatever void that fills, and that's not for me to decide. That's for the club to make decisions in terms of how we move forward after the end of the season. But you know, Mark remains in his role until the end of May, and he's a very professional person. So I know that he will spend the final time that he has here trying to do everything he can to not just fulfill his obligations, but to do everything he can to support people like myself and other staff here too. So it's just how it is.
Oh, definitely, and I think Steve Lansdowne spoke a few weeks ago of his willingness to come and speak to you in person in the next few weeks. Sorry, have you managed to see him yet and have a conversation with him?
No, because we talk regularly, so, but not face to face, and that's, as I've pointed out a few times already, that is to do with travel restrictions. You know, Steve's a resident in Guernsey, and they've been very, very careful to remain as COVID-free as possible. And likewise, we can't just dismiss what travel regulations are. So there is an element of being patient, and that's just where we are. So yes, we've spoken about meeting as soon as it is possible, but of course then it will be determined by the best way of doing that and the best place to do that, which I can't disclose at the moment because I don't know.
And how's Dasilva coming along? So we've seen pictures of him training on the pitches recently, but he hasn't played on 23 games yet, I don't think. What's his status at the minute?
Well, he's been training with the squad now 2 weeks without any restrictions. So that means, contacts allowed. He's making sure he trains with shin pads on, as I think is a very sensible thing to do, just because the nature of his injury. But he's settled back into the squad training structure, training regime very, very well. I think he's looks very much at ease with dealing with the aftermath of his injury, which is, in itself is not a straightforward to come back from. But he's doing very well, and as I think I said in the last press conference, if it's possible to get him involved in some, whether it be a practice match or whether it be an under-23 game, then we'll look at that if we feel it's the right progression. But I think for him, the priority now is to be fully available for next season. But I'm not ruling out or discounting the fact that he could be involved before the end of the season. So, but it has to be the right decision, I think, for where he is himself.
And of course, moving on to the game on Saturday, Sheffield Wednesday very much fighting for points at the bottom of the table, hoping to stay up. What kind of game are you anticipating?
Well, since Darren's been in there, and I know he's had to, or he's been absent from games because of his positive COVID test, but I think what you'll find with his teams anyway is that they are very committed to playing expansive football. I've worked with Darren when he was a player at West Brom. I was an assistant manager there, and he was a player. I know what he is as a man, and as a football man as well. He's very well respected, great guy, really good guy. But he will expect nothing less than total commitment from his players, and I think for them to give themselves the best chance of avoiding relegation now, obviously it's going to be it's going to be tough. It's been a hard season for them in many ways, with changing the manager. The 1, 2, 3, 4 managers this year, if you include the standing manager position. So 3 permanents and one temporary managerial slot, and that's not easy for players to and everybody to deal with, I suppose, in that regard. And with having the points deduction, which initially was 12 and went down to 6, but it's still a psychological blow to get into the positive points. So they've had a pretty much a season where they've never really been out of trouble, and that's never an easy situation to deal with. So it will be. They'll be fighting for their lives. We've certainly got to perform better than we did when we played the last team that we played against in a similar position in Coventry City, and we were disappointing on that day. So we need a better performance, absolutely. So it will be, tough game, but they all are at this stage of the season.
And of course, you had a great career at Sheffield Wednesday yourself. Does it mean, I think, more to you to play at those to return to those kind of grounds, or is it just like any other game?
Well, it's close to home. I live about 3 miles away. Look, Sheffield Wednesday is a big part of my life, has been. Both my kids are Wednesdayites, they're Wednesday supporters, and so I spent 7 years as a player there, and experienced some very good times and some difficult ones too. But I don't get sentimental about it. I'm very professional how I approach my own career, and every job I've ever had, I've always been totally committed to the job that I'm doing. So I recognise both my part in Sheffield Wednesday's past and also Sheffield Wednesday in my past, and it's still a club I have a lot of fondness for, but I'm working at Bristol City. Bristol City's my current club, and I'm a professional, so it's really about trying to get the right result for us, and it's really very, very straightforward. With my work head on. That's how I approach these things.
And we've seen a lot of the youngsters given minutes in recent weeks. Do you feel there's less pressure on those players to perform than there is the senior players?
No, No. They probably handle it differently because they don't have baggage. Young players don't necessarily have the baggage, but they can retain or gain some baggage if we're not careful with how we utilize them or use them or integrate them into the team at this stage of the season. And so what do I mean by that? Well, again, I've said on a number of occasions already that there is a possibility of damaging young players by exposing them to a situation that's not necessarily a positive one. To continue the development of young players is about, my job is to expose them to the right challenge, not to expose them to a challenge which is where they have a little chance of having a good experience from. So, because of our run of form, my expectations on the senior players, more experienced players, is greater, that they have to carry the greater share of burden, of responsibility. But of course, senior players can also have a lot more going on in their heads, and the beauty of young players sometimes is that they are able to perform because they are free in their head. What I don't want to do, I don't want our young players to start overthinking things at this early stage. So it's really important to try and get that balance right. And it's not an exact science. It takes, you use your own experiences to make judgment calls, and suffice to say, you don't always get them right. But I've been very pleased with the opportunities that our young players have had, the way that they've embraced the challenge, and I also think they've coped really with the bigger picture in terms of where we are as a side this season very, very well. So there's a lot of positives, but as I'm saying, just because a player plays one week and does okay, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be as easy the next week. So it really is a big jump and a big shift in physicality, sometimes on the technical side of it, sometimes in just being able to manage the situation that they're involved in. So, all those things together make it an interesting conundrum, really, to try and get right. But I don't have any reservations in using some of our young players if I feel that the challenge is right for them on any given day.
And finally, from me, of course, I think we've seen the pubs reopen this week. Have you managed to get out and explore Bristol a bit more, or visit any of the pubs or anything?
I did a bit of retail therapy yesterday, yeah. I had a little walk up the hill to one of my favourite shops, but that's not for you to know, that's for me to know. And it wasn't Greg's, before you say that.
Yeah, that's all for me. Thank you very much, Nigel.
Yeah, no
Best
problem.
of luck at the weekend.
Cheers.
Appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem. Cheers.
Thank you.
Yeah, Nigel, just a couple from me, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Obviously, Sheffield Wednesday, you are a reminder of the good old days for Sheffield Wednesday fans. Fans wallow in sort of sentiment and nostalgia. You seem to be, what are your memories from that era? Obviously, Wembley is going to spring to mind.
Yeah, but it was all
memories?
I think it's because I played for a number of managers. It feels like different eras within an era, if you know what I mean. So, different managers, different styles. So obviously, I signed back in '87 when Howard Wilkinson was the manager, and then he went to Leeds, and Peter Eustace took over for a while, and then it was the Ron Atkinson eras, which was, I think, one in which, if you asked a lot of the fans, would be Howard developed a real style and playing ethos which made Sheffield Wednesday a really difficult team to play against. And then Ron Atkinson came in at a time and I suppose in some ways changed changed the feel of the style of play, and it was a bit more cavalier in some ways. But of course, as I've already alluded to with talking earlier, I tend not to look back at through rose-tinted spectacles, because I know that I had some difficult times during my Wednesday career too. But I suppose time passes, and people always want to talk about the good times. But I was actually thinking today that one of the most enjoyable occasions, even though it was just a 2-2 draw, was when we played Kaiserslautern in the UEFA Cup at Hillsborough, and it was just an incredible atmosphere on that evening. So some really good times. I think I played 220 games, something like that, over a number of years. So it's a big chunk of my playing career. But I did have some pretty bad injuries when I was there too. So I spent quite a bit of time not playing. So I do have Sheffield's been my family home for a long time, 30 odd years. So it's been, I think I'm like a lot of players who moved to Sheffield who aren't originally from there, and end up staying there almost indefinitely. And it's amazing how the city itself has a bit of a myth about it. I think people say the word Sheffield, I think, ooh, might be a bit grim up north, but it's it is a beautiful city, really, and it's a place that we've enjoyed living for a long time. So I feel very, I feel very much at home there, as did the family. Both my kids were born in Sheffield, so we've spent a huge part of our lives there.
Oh, have the kids been asking you to go easy on? They must be worried that you could sort of drive another nail into the sort of push the Wednesday closer to the brink. Yeah,
but they're also fans of Dad, so which is quite good. Look, I you're asking me a question that you want me to say either yes or no to, so you can write exactly that. I'm not going to say that, right? And look, all the clubs I played for 3 clubs in my career: Shrewsbury Town, Sheffield Wednesday, and Middlesbrough. And all 3 clubs, I have a huge emotional attachment to all of them for different reasons, and they are teams that I always look very closely at. And I say every time I take a job that for me I do need an emotional attachment to how I work, because it's a big part of how I work. So that doesn't change. If it does change, I'll probably stop working. It's as simple as that. So I have to detach myself from these elements, because for me, working is it's about trying to win football matches. It's not about thinking about what's happened in previous parts of your career. So there has to be a detachment from those past emotional attachments, even if it's just for a short while. So it's a game we want to win for our own reasons, and I can't worry too much what that means to Sheffield Wednesday on the day. I might think differently afterwards, but that's not how I approach my job.
Yeah. Okay. Is it? Just a couple of other things, Nigel. Wednesday's slide from the Premier League. So I remember when they were sort of bloody in the noses of Man United on a regular basis with David Hurst.
Yeah. I mean,
it's a bit of a salutary tale on how competitive the upper echelons of English football are.
Yeah, but I think if you look at how, when clubs are able to compete in the top flight and be very competitive, and I don't know when the watershed was for Sheffield Wednesday, but there are always opportunities to make a transition or keep up with the teams that keep developing. I don't know exactly the time that Wednesday missed that opportunity, but my guess would be in and around that time. And effectively, when you stand still in foot, if you tread water, actually you're going backwards because somebody else will be trying to push on. And of course, I think Wednesday spent a long time with a very, very crippling debt. And it again, it's an example of only having to get one era slightly wrong with investment with players or poor investments with players, and the hangover from that can last a long time. So you'll have to fill the details in with that. But I think Sheffield Wednesday certainly had an opportunity in and around that period. So when, you know, in the mid-90s, where I think the cast had been broken in some ways and then reset, and I think we finished third in what would be the Premier League now, just before it turned Premier League, I think that was. Had a European campaign, and then things didn't really develop from there. So I don't know what the reasons were. I wasn't that was, I suppose, after my time. I left in '94 to go to Middlesbrough, so I joined as a 31-year-old, a club that was doing the opposite, and that was making an upward trajectory, even though at that point it was a championship side. But Middlesbrough was on the start of its incredible journey of being a very interesting Premier League club. But of course, you know,
I remember it clearly. You know, it was
so
great,
so
it's
interesting to see how clubs either not fall by the wayside. It's more to do with whether they are able to capitalise on successes that they have and continue with a development strategy that, again, aren't always popular with the public, but there needs to be a really effective strategy in which you are able to still develop without putting the fundamental structure of the club at risk. And I think a number of clubs have paid the price of maybe gambling too much or not gambling enough, and then there are clubs that have had a very clear outline of how they intend to try and make the progression. So it's again, never an exact science, but somewhere along the line, Wednesday didn't quite get it right. And you know, I'm a big believer in good times will come again at some point, but you know, sometimes it's difficult to believe that when there are further backward steps to negotiate. But look, it's the way it is, and it remains a very well supported football club. I think that both Sheffield clubs have very loyal fan bases and very partisan fan bases as well. But it's good. But I think both clubs miss challenging each other in the same division, and both would like to be in the Premier League, but it's not the case at the moment.
Yeah, I wonder if hopefully they'll play high old Sheffield Wednesday before the kick-off. That'll surely get the hairs.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So, finally, Nigel, I presume you probably get sick of being asked this, but what's the score with your sort of long-term future? Have you vis-a-vis Bristol City?
Yeah, I mean, it's as I talked about earlier. I don't know whether you heard the earlier question about me meeting Steve Lansdown, and you know, it's hard to appoint somebody just on a Zoom call, you know. So there is I fully understand the and I welcome it as well, the opportunity to meet face to face. And of course, it's logistically very difficult at the moment, but I also understand people's frustration. But I'm very I'm patient. I'm okay with. We will meet at some point, and hopefully then we can come to an agreement, maybe. But until that point, I recognise that the people have concerns, that nothing's been finalised yet. But actually, I'm sort of very, as I said last week in an interview, we're both honourable people, so it's something that hopefully we will meet at some point, and then it's about whether there's an agreement as to how we take things forward. So look, I am, when I say relaxed about it, I'm okay with how it feels, because this is what we agreed from the outset. So things haven't changed in terms of how we both parties see it. I think what's happened is that day-to-day, weekly circumstances can change, and I think that can possibly make people feel vulnerable or a bit unclear on what's happening. So I think it would be in everybody's interest if we could be, if we can have an agreement sometime before the end of the season. But as I say from the outset, it's been clear that this was the strategy, and I'm okay with that.
Okay, great. Amen to that. And thanks, Nigel.
My pleasure.
And good luck up in Yorkshire. And,
Thank you.
Don't get too emotional.
Well, at least I'll be at home at the weekend.
Yeah. No, it's a really, really great ground. It's just
it's fabulous.
That the fans aren't there.
Yeah, I know.
I love it, honestly.
Yeah.
I love Bramall Lane as well.
Yeah, good stuff.
Right. Thanks a lot for your time.
My pleasure. Take care.
Nigel.